Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Mosher's Mailbag. I believe this is episode 5. Want to thank everybody for being a Patreon subscriber. We're getting close to 100 subscribers, and I will soon make a donation to the Wounded Warrior Project once I hit 100. It's an exciting part of doing this that I'm anticipating doing. So as soon as we get to 100, hopefully by the end of next week, I'll be able to make my first donation to the Wounded Warrior Project, and that means we'll all have done something pretty good out of this project here on Patreon. Got a couple of questions today, as we do every week, and I'm going to try to answer them the best that I can. The first one is about changes on the defensive coaching staff. I'm asked if there have been any changes since last year on the defensive coaching staff that would have led to whatever is bugging this Eagles defense. We've seen bad tackling, we've seen bad coverage, kind of seen the whole gamut. The easy answer to that is no, there actually have been no changes on the defense. Jim Schwartz is still the defensive coordinator. Linebackers coach is still Ken Flagioli. The defensive line coach is still Chris Smith. The defensive backs coaches are still Corey Undlin with the cornerbacks and Tim Houck with the safeties. So not much change, no change whatsoever on the defensive staff. So what's been the difference? I think it's been a number of things. Obviously, injuries all over the secondary have really hurt. They're not as strong on the defensive line since they lost Derek Barnett. Tim Jernigan hasn't been a part of the rotation all year long. So that's a little bit a part of it. A lot, to be fair. The second part is they're just not playing well. And that kind of parlays into the second question I have, which is why are the linebackers over pursuing more this year than we've seen in the past? Specifically Jordan Hicks, specifically Nigel Bradham. I did a tape breakdown earlier this week. I hope everybody catches it really on the defense against Dallas. I had the assistance of former Eagle safety Quentin Michael. We watched some tape together and went through some of the breakdowns. And on some of those long Ezekiel Elliott runs, you'll notice that Hicks and Bradham just don't make the play, or they over pursue toward the mesh point on maybe an outside run. They just don't get themselves in positions to make a play. It's been something I've been talking about probably for 3 or 4 weeks, either here, writing about it on Patreon, or on any of my radio shows that I do on 97.3 ESPN, or on the Inside the Birds podcast that I do with Adam Kaplan and former Eagle Billy Osborne. I've talked about linebacker play. It just hasn't been as sound, hasn't been as fundamental as it was last year. And that's surprising. I mean, you're talking about Bradham and Hicks, two veterans, two very good players. And when Hicks went out last year, Bradham took over as the main middle linebacker and calling the defense. And he seemed to make every single play. And you're just not getting that playmaking production out of either guy, especially on third down. You just don't see them having the same impact that they had last year. For Bradham's case, I will say it is difficult in the NFL for guys to have career years and then come back the next year and have a career year. You see that out of the top 10% of the league, whether it's guys like Todd Gurley or Tom Brady, Drew Brees, the excellent elite players in this league. They do it year in and year out. But everybody else falls into that 70 or 80% of the league that has a lot of variance from year to year. You're seeing it with Corey Clement. Obviously had a great year last year. Who knows what's bugging him this year, but he's now third in the order, really, in the running back rotation behind Wendell Smallwood and Josh Adams. So you're seeing that with Bradham. Had a career year last year, made that money in free agency. The Eagles brought him back. I believe it was around $8 million a year, and now he's just not having the same impact. So hopefully over the second half of the season, he'll put it together. Jordan Hicks will put it together, and we'll see. The interesting thing for Jordan is that he's coming into a contract year. This is his fourth year, just like Darby, fourth year, Ajayi, fourth year. Those guys were hoping to have great years and strike it big in free agency. Ajayi did not stay healthy. Ronald Darby is now out with an ACL tear. You've got Hicks, who's finally stayed healthy this year, but it just hasn't been productive. It'll be interesting to see what the Eagles do with him as far as an extension in the offseason. Last question is going to be about coaching, and it's who's teaching the defensive backs to tackle the way they are and kind of wrap up around the shoulders instead of, the waist or going low, and why are they avoiding contact? In one of those film sessions I did in the story of Quentin Michael, you'll notice on that picket fence play that everybody's railed about, Ronald Darby had a chance to make a tackle on I wrote Ezekiel Elliott. It was actually Smith the running back who had the ball. Either way, you see Ronald Darby go up there and make a tackle, and then at the last minute just completely bail out, and that's what enabled Smith to pick up 14 to the 15 yards. Otherwise, he would have been dropped about 5 or 6 yards behind scrimmage. Unfortunately, we can blame Corey Undlin, we can blame Tim Houck or whoever, and guys coaching the secondary, but that's just desire and hustle and want to. The question to me is, how do guys who are not making tackles, and we won't know now for the rest of the year because Darby is out, how do they sit in those classrooms with their teammates and go through the plays on the film and have it stand out that they simply did not make a tackle, didn't even want to make a tackle? How do they have accountability? How do they look themselves in the mirror knowing that their other teammates are relying on them to make a tackle? Accountability is a big part of this thing. Jason Kelsey this week said that maybe guys aren't being as accountable as they should be. He was specifically addressing the offense and not the whole team, but somebody has got to take that defense. If Brian Dawkins were still on this team, he would have took Ronald Darby aside and said, how do you do that? How do you bail out on your teammates and not make a tackle that you need to make? And you just wonder, going forward, who is it going to be? Malcolm Jenkins? Is it going to be somebody else, Michael Bennett, that steps up? It's got to be someone playing fairly well that steps up and says, hey, listen, if you don't want to make a play like that, don't go and line up on the field. Somebody else will. If it's not going to be the coach, it's got to come from a senior leader. And that's a really big part of going forward, what the Eagles need to do better on defense. I know that statistically they have been a good defense. They have not created turnovers, though, and they have folded in the fourth quarter. And I really think some guys need to step up and take other guys, especially young guys right now who are being forced to play in the secondary, who are inexperienced, guys like Chandon Sullivan or Trey Sullivan or even Rasul Douglas, who is not that experienced compared to some others. They've got to get the veterans to take them under their arms and say, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. And we'll see if the leadership really steps up over the final 8 games. That's going to do it for this week's Mosher's Mailbag. Remember, myself, Adam Kaplan, Billy Osborne, we'll be on WIP on Saturday starting at 3 o'clock for Inside the Birds Radio. I'll have also on Sunday, if you're in Jersey, I'll be at the Landmark Americana in Glassboro, New Jersey, doing our normal Thursday night show. Some weather moved the show till Sunday. So from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, right up to the game, I'll be doing a show on 97.3 ESPN. You can hear it on 97.3, but I'll be at the Landmark Americana Bar and Grill, and you can catch me there doing a radio show. All right, talk to you guys all next week. And once again, thanks for your subscriptions. Thanks for being loyal Patreon patrons, and keep sending me messages, keep asking me questions, and we'll continue to do this mailbag every week. All right, I'm out. Have a great weekend, everybody.